Take a random image from any Vanillaware game and you instantly know who made it. Very few studios have developed such a strong artistic signature and unique creative voice. Putting to bed any questions about video games as art, Vanillaware games are like watercolor paintings brought to life. Many developers would be satisfied with amazing visuals alone, but Vanillaware also focuses on creating distinctive gameplay experiences, taking familiar genres and tropes and remixing them so they feel fresh and original. And that same love and care went into developing Odin Sphere. It received tons of critical acclaim and awards when it came out, like IGN's Best of 2007, Game Radar's Pure Beauty Award, and winning 4 top honors at the PS2 Awards. But since it came out at the tail end of the PS2 lifecycle, it was going to be an uphill climb against the new hotness that was the PS3, and all the hype that goes with that, so it never reached the heights it deserved. Those lucky enough to have played it back then have a place in their hearts for this special but flawed game. Special but flawed is not just how we describe your mom, but is also the best type of game for a remix. Odin Sphere Leifthrasir came out on the PS3, PS4, and Vita in 2016, and was anything but a simple port. No longer running on a potato, the visuals have been beefed up to 1080p and running at a silky smooth 60 frames a second, which is a must for a fast game like this. But they didn't stop there. The level design has been completely reworked, the economy has been overhauled, and the combat has been improved from top to bottom. While not a completely new game, Odin Sphere Leifthrasir has so many improvements that even if you played the original game, you may want to revisit this version. I played the original back on my PS2, but for some reason, I never finished it. I only played a few hours, put it down, and never picked it up again. Don't get me wrong, I didn't hate it. I thought it was beautiful and interesting, but there were a handful of design choices and technical issues that pulled me out of the experience. I always meant to give it another go, and thankfully, when I booted up Odin Sphere Leifthrasir, I was hooked from beginning to end. It's the same game, but with all of the rough edges smoothed out, making for a much more engaging and rewarding experience. So after nearly 20 years, not only did I finally finish the game, but I completed it 100%. So sit back and relax, and let's dive into the not-so-flat world of Odin Sphere Leifthrasir.
She was the most gallant and noble of all my warriors.
Immediately, Vanillaware's charm jumps off the screen with artistry on full display. Yes, there have been graphical improvements, which I'll detail later, but the core visual design hasn't aged a day. Odin Sphere still holds up incredibly well, especially considering it originally came out the year the iPhone first launched. Yeah, the beautiful and varied environments are filled with all kinds of strange creatures and secrets, and when not drooling over the visuals, I was hooked on the moment-to-moment gameplay, exploring, leveling up, and beating up baddies with fast, flashy combat. The story of warring kingdoms, magic, and an impending Armageddon is told from the perspective of a young girl named Alice reading a series of fantasy books in her attic. Odin Sphere feels like a collection of Shakespearean tragedies, both through the story and themes, but also in how everything is presented like it's on a stage. Each story runs back to back, telling the same overarching events, but each time from a different perspective. There's Gwendolen, a Valkyrie and daughter to the demon lord Odin. Cornelius, the prince of Titania, turned into a puka, which is basically whatever the hell this thing is. Mercedes, the reluctant queen of the fairies. Oswald, the dark knight in love with Gwendolen, who's searching for his purpose. And Velvet, who hides her identity as Odin's illegitimate daughter and is called the Forest Witch. Odin Sphere was the brainchild of game designer George Kimitani, who previously worked on Princess Crown in 1997, which was this Japan-exclusive side-scrolling action RPG for the Sega Saturn. Originally conceived as a sequel, it morphed over time to be more of a spiritual successor to Princess Crown, taking and evolving the multi-layered narrative style from that original game. I like seeing how the similar events would play out from different perspectives, and by playing as each of the characters, the gameplay remains mostly fresh throughout, which is a big win for a beat-em-up pushing 40 hours. This is essentially a side-scrolling hack and slash and shooter RPG with platforming, cooking, and, planting mechanics played on a series of interconnected 2D stages. There's nothing else that feels quite like this to play, not just in how all of these seemingly disparate elements are mashed together, but in how well it all just works. Leifthrasir makes a number of improvements, both big and small, that refines and expands the gameplay systems, making them thoroughly engaging. And with the responsive controls, beautiful animations, and amazing graphical flourishes, there's an elegant ballet to everything. Whether slicing and dicing through swaths of enemies or cooking the finest cuisine, everything feels rewarding. The fictional continent of Arion is divided into a handful of diverse nations scattered across the land. You'll travel through each nation, fighting hordes of enemies, gathering resources as you make your way to the area boss. Areas within each are these circular stages that continue to loop if you keep going either left or right. Now, I remember this did not click with me when I played it originally. I felt the design was clunky, and it reminded me far too much of Friday the 13th on the NES, where I never quite felt like I knew where I was going. However, this time I really liked the way this worked. The stages have various branching paths with secrets and a lot of emphasis on exploration, rewarding your curiosity. It's fun to go off the beaten path and find hidden pieces of armor, special moves, items, and recipes. You can pull up a map at any time, and if you buy the zones map from a vendor, you can see where all of the treasures are hiding. This system makes it incredibly easy to see where you are, where you still need to go, and anything you missed along the way, which can be particularly handy when looking for 100% completion. As you progress through the spherical stages, you'll fight everything in your way, collect treasure, seeds, and phosons for upgrading your characters. There are rest areas in every stage where you can make food and buy items or equipment, giving you time to breathe before your next fight. Improved from the original are completely remixed stages, new battle arenas, and new vertical areas within the environments, with a focus on simple platforming. So even if you're familiar with the original, this will feel fresh. But you can also play through the original level design with the updated visuals by selecting Classic Mode before starting the game. Combat is one of the biggest improvements over the original game, with fast, fluid, and impactful action that, while simple, never wears out its welcome. You'll use a combination of basic attacks and cipher skills that are tied to each character's magical weapon. You can block, dodge, or jump to avoid attacks, or to get in a better position. You build combos by mashing the attack button and a direction, like how pressing down will slide attack and pressing up will jump attack. This is particularly handy for hitting airborne enemies or for juggling enemies with air combos. Which is unsurprising why IGN gave Odin Sphere Leifthrasir a 9.5 out of 10. Had to be those air combos. As you progress, you'll unlock more and more cipher skills that you can map to the circle button and any directional combination, giving you 4 different skills with that single button. And while the system isn't overly deep, you'll be switching playable characters about every 6 to 8 hours, so everything remains fresh, especially with the changes to the gameplay. Like how Gwendolyn is straight up hack and slash with her sword and melee attacks, whereas Mercedes has a crossbow with rapid fire magic arrows and the ability to fly, feeling like a shooter. It's simple to learn and feels great even when just mashing the buttons, but there's a high skill ceiling that as you get good, you'll pull off some impressive combos. Now, the game's no cakewalk, but it never feels unfair. There were times, however, where I had to grind and level up a bit before I could best a particularly punishing boss. And this isn't just a matter of whoever has the highest number wins. You actually need to balance character level and your skill. After laying waste to the enemies in each stage, you'll get a rating from D up to S based on your speed, damage dealt, and damage taken. The better the rating, the better the rewards, so you'll be looking to get the S rank for each stage. Okay, so hack and slash, check. Shooter, yeah, check. But RPG? Really? Well, yeah. And just like pretty much everything else, this system isn't like any other game. You'll talk to some NPCs that mostly serve to deliver small bursts of exposition, but you won't take on any side quests or anything like that. No, the RPG elements are focused on how you strengthen and build each of your characters through skills, equipment, and character leveling. This game features an extremely expansive set of mechanics involved with leveling up. You can gain experience by defeating enemies, but most of the experience your characters will gain will be from things like cooking and gardening. Instead of the typical XP-based character growth from most RPGs, each of your character's abilities is linked to the ciphers. By defeating bosses or hidden throughout the kingdoms, you'll come across Phozon prisms. These unlock cipher skills, which you can then map to the circle button. And after cracking skulls, they'll release spirit energy called Phozons. You can spend these on strengthening cipher skills or to grow seeds into plants that you can eat to level up your character. And you'll be doing a lot of eating, you little piggy. Food plays a big role in the game. Once you've acquired a recipe and have the right ingredients, you can give them to Mori, the traveling chef, to prepare you a meal that increases your max health and gives you tons of experience points. You can also travel to the Puka village to visit the restaurants and pay for meals with special currency without the need for recipes or ingredients. It's always satisfying preparing several meals back to back, or planting a handful of seeds and getting a massive boost to your stats. Cooking isn't the only thing you'll be doing with the ingredients you're acquiring. You'll also get alchemy recipes for concocting various potions that you can craft and use even when in the heat of combat. These can be an absolute lifesaver, like crafting a health potion when you're on the brink of death, or a volcano potion, setting an enemy ablaze who's weak to fire. This combined with the simple accessory system to apply passive buffs, like additional speed or increased power when health is low, creates a well-rounded but simple to understand set of systems that all work together in satisfying ways that's a lot of fun to experiment with. For each new character, the kingdom order, the stage layout, items, and enemy placement will be different. However, since each book has you returning to the same areas, fighting the same enemies, and seeing the same overarching events, you'll start to get a sense of been there, done that. Depending on your tolerance, I could see the repetition wearing thin for some, but seeing each of the different stories along with the changes to the gameplay kept me interested throughout. After finishing the 5 character books, you unlock one final book that has you combining skills with each of the main cast for one final showdown. I don't want to dip into spoilers, but the finale is fantastic. And of course, so are the visuals. I mean, I don't really have to tell you at this point, you can see the pure artistry on full display. Unless you can't see. In which case, trust me, every single frame is a masterpiece, looking like a painting painstakingly detailed by hand. And if you can't see, I'm also really good looking too. Vanillaware has fully embraced 2D sprites. There's something special, more organic, and more tangible about this visual design when compared to even the most detailed 3D visuals of today. And it's a bit hard to nail down all of the influences shaping the look, from anime to traditional fantasy and pinup models, but combined they create something unique and utterly gorgeous. As has become their signature style, there's a level of fan service baked into the designs, with exaggerated proportions and scantily clad outfits. But they don't reach the same levels as Dragon's Crown, where they push the models way past the breaking point. Men, women, it doesn't matter. Everyone got the Vanillaware treatment, like Queen Elfaria with her exaggerated hourglass figure and bountiful queenliness, or Mercedes, the sexy elf showing off a bit of leg. There's General Brigand's over-the-top quivering muscles, or every puka looking just good enough to eat. Now the visuals have been beefed up in Leifthrasir without changing the overall visual design. It's what your memory believes the original looked like, but definitely didn't. The resolution's been pumped up and the aspect ratio has been widened. That change alone makes a difference in how the game feels to play, being able to see enemies coming or see more of the stages as you navigate them. The enemy AI actually had to be retooled so enemies knew when to attack. Now, the HD makeover wasn't actually as tough as you'd assume, since all of the original art assets were created in HD and then scaled back for the PS2 hardware. So they didn't have to recreate everything. Some elements were redrawn or replaced when the team believed they could improve on the originals, character faces being a notable upgrade, and then some graphical flourishes that made the whole thing pop, with new shadow and other lighting effects. The overall soundscape is another work of artistry, with a number of improvements. The original amateur voice acting was replaced by new professional performances. The score from Base Escape, led by founder Hitoshi Sakimoto, makes a return, weaving in themes from Norse mythology through a Japanese lens, sounding less culturally accurate but more impactful for the action. And it's a great complement to the fantasy setting, alongside the crisp and punchy sound effects punctuating the action. Leifthrasir not only made use of rearranged pieces, but also has 25 new tracks to accompany the new battle arenas. Completing Odin Sphere Leifthrasir and getting all of the trophies is not just painless, it may come naturally without even trying. You'll earn the vast majority of the 48 trophies simply by playing through the story with each of the characters. You'll also need to get every recipe, which comes easy enough, and you'll need to unlock all of the cipher skills for each character, which means you'll need to find all of the hidden Phozon prisms. One tip for that: locked skills will tell you where their Phozon prism is hiding, so easy peasy. After getting the normal ending, you'll unlock the Churning Rift, which is like a boss rush. All in, you're looking at around 40 to 45 hours. What more can be said about Odin Sphere Leifthrasir? The masterpiece of a game from nearly 20 years ago has never looked, sounded, or played better. The varied playable cast, deep but accessible gameplay, and charming world make every moment a real joy. And while playing through the same worlds again and again may get tedious for some, the experience is unlike any other, and truly makes you appreciate the artistry in every beautiful frame.